I want to temporarily silence those pesky scikit-learn warnings, without making permanent changes. I'm looking for a way to control warning behavior during a specific part of my code. Think of it like muting your phone during a movie. You want the silence only for a bit. I'm working with scikit-learn, a popular machine learning library in Python. Sometimes, scikit-learn gives warnings. These aren't always errors, but they can clutter your output. I need to manage these effectively. I've got a few options to try. I need to choose the ones that will temporarily quiet warnings during a block of code. The goal is to return to normal warning behavior after I'm done with that block. I want to highlight the options that correctly and safely suppress warnings only during the time I specify, restoring the previous settings afterward. This option uses --ignore_ warnings, . This function is specifically for testing and is too broad. It silences all warnings, which might hide important issues in my code, not good for real-world use. Think of it like turning off all the alarms in your house, even the smoke detector. Not a great plan. This approach uses --config_context with --print_changed_ only equals false . However, this only affects warnings about configuration changes, not the warnings from my actual algorithms. It's like only muting the previews before a movie, not the actual film. This one uses --config_context with --verbosity equals 0 . This is the perfect solution. It silences most warnings and, importantly, I'm using it within a block, so it reverts automatically when the block ends. Just like muting a section of the movie and automatically unmuting it afterward. This tries to use --config_context to change the global warning level outside a with statement. This is risky. It leaves the global settings changed, potentially affecting other parts of my code. A bad choice. It's like changing the volume of the entire theater, instead of just your headphones. This section introduces the overall topic: managing warnings in the scikit-learn library, a popular Python machine learning tool. I'll show you how to control the warnings temporarily, which is useful when you're running lots of code and don't want warnings to clutter your output. The core problem is to temporarily quiet down warnings from scikit-learn, sklearn, without permanently changing your settings. This is important because some warnings can be useful, and you only want to suppress them when needed, for example during a specific part of your code. This explains why I need a *with statement. Think of *with as a special block that guarantees things get cleaned up properly afterward. It makes sure the settings are automatically reset back to normal when I am done. Only option C is the correct way to handle this. Let me explain why option C is correct and the other options are wrong. Option C uses the --config_context correctly within a *with statement, to temporarily change the warning level and then automatically resets back to default. I've found the solution. The correct answer is option C. It's the safest and most reliable way to handle temporary suppression of warnings. This option is incorrect because --print_changed_ only equals false. Only changes how messages about * configuration changes are displayed, not general warnings from algorithms. It won't affect the warnings from your machine learning process. This option is incorrect because it tries to modify the global settings directly, without using a with statement to revert it. This can lead to problems in other parts of the code. I'm essentially leaving a mess behind. This is the correct option. It uses verbosity equals 0 inside the config_context to turn warnings off temporarily and restores them when the with block ends. This ensures only warnings within the block are suppressed. This section tells you what we're focusing on: handling warnings in the scikit-learn library, sklearn. I'm asking how you can briefly turn off annoying scikit-learn warnings without breaking your code. Think of it like muting your phone for a meeting. You want to silence notifications temporarily, then have them back on afterward. This option is the winner. It uses --config_context with verbosity equals 0 inside a with statement. This cleverly sets the warning level to silent only within that specific code block, automatically restoring the previous setting when you're done. That's exactly the temporary behavior we need. This option is dangerous. Although it attempts to control warnings, it does so outside a backquote with backquote statement. I changed the global settings, which might affect other parts of your program. Imagine accidentally changing your keyboard settings globally. Unexpected things could happen. This uses backquote ignore underscore warnings, backquote, which is too heavy-handed. It's designed mainly for testing. You might accidentally silence critical warnings in production code that could tell you about potential bugs. This is like turning off all alerts on your phone. You'll miss everything, both important and unimportant. Here, we tried using backquote config underscore context, print underscore change underscore only equals false, backquote. That only affects warnings about changing config settings, not the warnings from your machine learning algorithms. It's like trying to mute a barking dog by muting your TV. The dog is still barking. I tried using backquote print underscore changed underscore only equals false backquote within backquote config underscore context backquote. However, this only controls warnings about configuration changes, not the warnings from the machine learning process itself. It's too specific. This is the overall topic. We're focusing on safely and briefly quieting warnings from the sklearn library, a powerful tool in machine learning. It's all about careful control. This is the approach to use. This uses backquote config underscore context backquote s backquote verbosity backquote parameter to control warnings. The backquote with backquote statement ensures the original settings are restored. I find this the safest, most elegant option. It's the correct answer. This employs backquote ignore underscore warnings, backquote. While it achieves silencing, it's too broad and unsuitable for production code because it suppresses all warnings. It is a bad practice. I'm managing warnings in the sklearn library. It's a crucial part of building robust machine learning models, because uncontrolled warnings can obscure important error messages. The key here is temporary control. I want to silence warnings only for a specific part of my code, without affecting the rest of my program. This avoids masking genuinely important warnings that might appear elsewhere. Option A uses backquote ignore underscore warnings, backquote. This approach is too blunt. It's like turning off your fire alarm completely. I lose the ability to see any warning, even potentially important ones. It's generally best used only during testing. Option B uses backquote print underscore changed underscore only equals false backquote. This only controls warnings related to changes in sklearn's configuration, not warnings from the algorithms themselves. Think of it as adjusting the volume of a specific radio station but leaving other stations unaffected. It doesn't solve the problem. Option D modifies sklearn's settings globally without using a context manager, the backquote with backquote statement. This is risky because it can affect other parts of my code. It's like changing the thermostat in my entire house from my bedroom. All the rooms would have a change in temperature. The correct approach is to make localized changes using a context manager for better isolation and control. Option C is the best. It uses the backquote config underscore context backquote with backquote verbosity equals 0 backquote inside a backquote with backquote statement. This temporarily sets the warning level to silent within that specific block of code, automatically restoring the previous setting once the block is done. This is the safest and most precise approach. Think of it like temporarily muting a single speaker during a concert. This section introduces the topic, managing warnings in the sklearn library. Sklearn, sklearn, is a popular Python library for machine learning. Sometimes, sklearn generates warnings that can clutter your output. We'll learn how to control these warnings. The core question focuses on temporarily silencing warnings from sklearn within a specific block of code, ensuring they return to their default behavior afterward. This is crucial for cleaner output during development or specific code sections, without affecting the overall warning behavior of the application. This code snippet demonstrates the correct approach. I import the backquote config underscore context backquote function from backquote sklearn. Utils backquote. Then, I use a backquote with backquote statement. Inside the backquote with backquote block, I set backquote verbosity backquote to 0. This tells sklearn to suppress warnings. When the code exits the backquote with backquote block, the verbosity setting automatically reverts to its default value. Option C is identified as the correct answer because it uses the backquote config_context backquote effectively within a backquote with backquote statement to temporarily manage warning verbosity, ensuring a clean and controlled environment for the specified code block and a smooth return to the original warning settings after execution. Here, I use backquote config_context backquote but with backquote print_changed_ only equals false backquote. This only affects warnings about configuration changes, not warnings from the machine learning algorithms. It will not effectively suppress the intended warnings. This approach directly modifies the global configuration. It doesn't use a backquote with backquote statement, which means the settings won't automatically revert. This is risky because it could affect other parts of the code that rely on the default warning settings. Indicates options B and D as incorrect answers. Indicates options B and D as incorrect answers. Indicates options B and D as incorrect answers. This row provides a general label for the provided code options, A, B, C, D. I'll manage warnings from the scikit-learn library. Scikit-learn is a popular machine learning library in Python, and sometimes it generates warnings. I need to control these warnings, sometimes silencing them temporarily. I want to temporarily stop warnings from appearing during a specific part of my code. The goal is to make my code cleaner and easier to read without permanently changing how scikit-learn handles warnings. This is the correct way to solve the problem. I use the backquote config_context backquote to temporarily change verbosity to 0, silent, and the backquote with backquote statement ensures that my changes are automatically undone afterward. This is the best approach because it's clean, efficient, and doesn't affect other parts of my code. This approach is incorrect because I am directly changing a global setting. This means that the changes will persist even after I finish my code block, and that can be problematic. Always prefer using the backquote with backquote statement for this kind of thing, as it's more predictable and safer. Option A uses backquote ignore_warnings, backquote, which is way too broad. It silences all warnings, not just the ones I wanted to suppress, which can be dangerous because it could hide important error messages. Option B uses backquote print_changed_ only equals false backquote. This controls messages about configuration changes and does not actually control the warnings produced by the algorithms themselves. This is not what we want. I've analyzed why options A, B, and D are wrong. They either suppress too much, A, suppress the wrong thing, B, or don't properly restore the settings, D. They could cause unexpected problems.